Welcome to the third part of this Football Manager 2018 Tactics Guide. And if you haven't watched the earlier versions, it's going to be links to part 1 and part 2 in the description below. Part 1 tells you about what to do when you take over a new team, finding formations and setting up your team for the first time. The second part tells you how to prepare for match day, reading scouting reports about your opponents and listening to tactical advices from your assistant manager, using the new tactical briefing function, and so on. This, though, the third part, is all about match day. So let's submit the team. And of course, we get some information here. Some guys are lacking match fitness. Of course, Conte is, because, I mean, he haven't been playing for 8 months, so he is lacking match fitness. And you see the team we're up against, the formation, nothing special. You know these things. If you play the Football Manager 18 for a few games, probably done some preseason stuff or something like that. You've seen it before. And yeah, Napoli signed Kagawa in this save. And that worries me a bit. Next thing is the team talks. And I never hand them over to my assistant. I haven't actually tried it in 18, but at least in previous versions, I never liked how he did it. I rarely listened to him, but I always did it. And when it comes to team talks, you need to do a lot of experimenting. You need to find out what works with your team. As an example, in Football Manager 18, I played around almost 150 hours during the beta, doing 2 saves. This save with AC Milan and another save with Real Madrid. And my team talks is very different depending on if I'm doing the Real Madrid save or if I'm doing this save. When I'm doing my Real Madrid save, like basically every talk, I tell them I expect nothing but a win. Nothing. Like, we are Real Madrid. I can't tell them to chill, relax, enjoy your game. I need to tell them like they are big superstars, and I tell them you need to win. But with my AC Milan save, I'm usually not that aggressive. If we are playing easier at home games, yeah, I talk about expect nothing but a win. But if you're playing, I mean, we are playing Napoli away. It's not the easiest of games. So I probably say something like, let's see what options we have here. Actually, I don't really like any of these options. But maybe this one, because options you get here, if you played Football Manager any version before, you know that they varies. And yeah, I really don't like any of the options I get right now, but I'm probably gonna go with this one. Of course, you can change the way you say things. I usually use assertive, but it depends on the situation. And but during the pre-match, I usually always use assertive. But for the halftime talk, I could go passionate or aggressive, depending on what's going on the pitch. Like, if you are behind, I often go aggressive. If something crazy has happened, maybe passionate. And actually, if this is like a derby or like a Champions League final or something like that, I'll probably go passionate already for the pre-team talk. For derbies and very important games. But otherwise, usually assertive, and then aggressive for the halftime talk if you're behind. Passionate also like after the game if you do a great win. Aggressive if you have lost, so on. But you really need to experiment here and see what works for you. So a basic tip is, if you have played this team before and you lost the last game against them, it's almost always good to bring it up here, because then you often get an option like saying, we need to take revenge from the last game. We owe it to them. And if you say that, almost all the time you get positive reactions, because I mean, they want to bounce back. They want to beat them. And another thing that usually often works well also is if you played really well the last game and you get the option to tell the guys like, just go out here and continue from last game. That one usually works well also. But it kind of is dependent though, because you need to have kind of the same guys on the pitch. If you have rotated a lot and these guys weren't in that last game, they might not care at all. But for now, I'm going to use this one. And then we're going to see the reactions here. Not the greatest of reactions. Most people didn't care. A few of them seemed relaxed. Relaxed are green. We're getting the thumbs up. but it's definitely not the reaction I prefer. I prefer them to be like focused or fired up or something like that. So if I get a lot of good reactions here, I'm usually happy with it and I just kick off the game. But if I get few of them, or maybe even none, like this, I usually go to the individual team parts. So let's go to the defense here, and then I'm going to say something to them. And kind of here, like, it depends on the team. If I'm going to say something positive, if I'm going to sell, like, have high demands on you, I barely ever use the no pressure one. But one thing I also want to mention is, if I have youth players in my team, like really young kids, I usually talk a lot nicer to them. Like I say, I have faith in you, I believe in you, come on mate, I trust you, things like that. While in Real Madrid, when I have my divas world-class players, I usually said like, I expect you to take control, I expect you to do this. So the way I talk definitely depends on the players and the club I'm in. But yeah, basically do a lot of experimenting here, see what happens. And it looks a little bit better here. Look at this. Seems motivated, delighted. Still, I mean, this is not great. I prefer them to be focused and fired up, but I guess we can't get everything here, can we? So the first thing I want to talk about during the game when it comes to tactics is actually not any of the analysis and tactics and so on here. We will definitely talk about them very soon. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the camera. And the camera is hugely important if you want to get serious about the tactics. Myself, when I play it, I usually stream or record for YouTube, and then I usually use a camera like this because I think it's more entertaining to see the game like in a way that you probably should see the game if you were watching a match yourself. But if you want to get serious into tactics, you should definitely, absolutely not use a camera like this. A camera like this is garbage if you want to analyze your team and see what happens. And we really need to change it around. So I'm going to click here. And when it comes to tactics, there are a few different things. And one of them is new for FM18. It's a data analyze view. And if you select that one, you get to see everything from above. You should either be using this one, or maybe the even more popular one, like everybody that's serious for tactic almost use the 2D classic one. And why are these views so good when it comes to tactics? Well, it's kind of obvious. You really get stability to see what's going on, how your formation is working, where your players are. Like, look at this, for example. Look at this defensive line. It's a very weird one. Yes, you will want to have quite a few players there. But look at this, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players that's basically taking care of 2 opponents. That's not good defense, is it? We probably want to have more players here than them, but maybe 3 or 4 would be enough. The rest of the lads, we want to go up here, start picking up these guys, because I'm betting this guy is probably going to play it in here, and one of these guys will score against us. But yeah, like this view, well, luckily for us, that was a really... he tried to shoot himself, basically. Donnarumma said it. But this view or the data analysis view, it kind of gives you almost the same thing, but in 3D. And of course, another thing is you can work with the height where the camera should be, higher up or lower down. Obviously, it's going to change what you see. And also, you can work with camera zoom. So try to find something where you can really see where all your players are, how your formation is working, how they're acting compared to the opponents. And yeah, as I said, the 2D classic view, probably the best option. But if you're kind of bored with the 2D one, the data analysis one is probably the second best choice. And of course, you can use different camera for replays. So you use this one to see what's going on, and then for the highlights, or for the replays, like for a goal or something like that, you can switch to a fancy one that lets you see a cool angle. And you can also select what things. Like right now I'm only showing replays on goals, but you can show replays on a lot of things. Another thing that you want to change around if you are like really serious about your tactics is this one. And this is basically the same reason that I'm using a fancy camera, like maybe TV view. It's the same reason I'm using key highlights, because I think it's like when you live stream or do YouTube like Let's Play series, it's more entertaining like to see the highlights rather than like something else. If you're serious about tactics, you definitely should increase the amount of highlights you're seeing. At least extended highlights, maybe even comprehensive highlights, because you want to see a lot of situation. I mean, going in a full match, you can do it, but it's probably going to be very, very slow. But at least one of these guys, so you get to see a lot of highlights, a lot of things are going on, and you get a lot of chances to see your team in action, look at the tactics, what's working and what's not working. So yeah, camera and highlights are very important if you want to get serious about tactics. Another extremely important thing when it comes to tactics during the match is all the information you can see in front of you between the highlights. And exactly what you see here is actually up to yourself to change it around. I've done it myself, and as you can see, there's quite a few different options you can choose to show here. And all of this information is very, very, very important when it comes to the tactics. One of my favorites is actually to keep the opponent's formation up here, because since you probably picked your tactic at the beginning based on how you thought they were going to be playing, if they change something up, that might mean that you want to change something with your tactics around. And of course, this can change during the game. Maybe if you take the lead, they change to a more attacking formation. Maybe you are behind, they change to more defensive formation. Maybe they get somebody sent off. What will they do with their formation then? So this is one of my favorites, but don't only use this one. Take a look at all the other information that you can find here. Of course, it's always interesting to keep track of their team. Maybe some of their players picks up a potential injury. Then maybe you want to go back to the settings for opponent's instructions and tell them to tackle Kagawa a bit harder. But it can also tell like things like fitness levels and so on, and how they are performing. And I mean, if somebody is performing like a madman here, maybe you want to put some extra marking on them or something like that. When it comes to this formation, for the match stats, there are quite a few different things to take a look at. I mean, first off, shots kind of tells you who are creating chances, but are the shots hitting the targets? And if they're not hitting the targets, you definitely might want to go and try to get some more information to find out why are they not hitting the target. And we're going to come back to that in a while. Another important thing could be possession, depending on the way you are playing. Let's say, for example, you are trying to play focusing on counterattacks, but you have a huge margin of possession. Let's say you have 70% of the possession. Maybe counterattacking is not the right option if you are the one having the ball all the time. Then you're probably pressing them down and there won't be room for any counterattacks. At the same time, it could be the other way around. You're trying to play possession-based football, but you clearly loses out on possession. Then maybe you want to change something up with your formation to win back from possession. Or maybe you should go counter-attacking, trying to abuse that they have the possession and you want to counter. And of course, focus of attacks. We checked that one out earlier when we prepared for the game. And of course, as important as it is to keep track of the formation, you want to keep track of anything changes here. For example, right now it's pretty balanced. But very recently, I did a Twitch stream where I was playing Real Madrid. And all of a sudden, like 20-30 minutes into the game, everything changed around, where they had basically a crazy amounts on the sides here. They had like almost all attack was on the sides, and they were down to like 10% here in the middle. And normally, because I was playing as Real Madrid, I was just having some fun. And Real Madrid, of course, if you know the way they play normally, I mean, you have a player like Marcelo. He starts as a left back, but his focus is not on defense. I mean, that guy is attacking like he was a striker sometimes. So seeing that actually made me go to the instructions and change his instruction from being like a wing back focusing on attack down to become a fullback focusing on defense, just because they were attacking so much on that side. And of course, Marcelo probably wasn't happy being forced to play in that role, and his defensive side is definitely not his strongest. But I mean, I felt like it was a good way to counter, since they were attacking like a madman on his flank. But at the same time, since they had nothing in the middle, I basically put all my central midfielders like up, focusing on attack. Nobody was on defense, nobody was on support, played the attacking middle, because I know like we don't need to defend anything in the middle, we can just focus on attacking in the middle. So things like that can change during the game, and seeing that, of course, you might want to change stuff up. Also, this could be a good way, maybe one of your players gets injured and you don't notice it, seeing it here in your statistics side here. Of course, maybe you want to sub them. And also, you can notice players picking up yellow cards. And sometimes, when my players picks up yellow cards, what I do is I go to the tactics. And this is a new tactics view for FM18. But as for an example here, Conte's picked up a yellow card. And some players could be a bit worried from. And sometimes I just like, okay, I don't want to risk anything with Conte. I go to the instructions and tell him to ease off tackles, just to reduce the risk of having him getting sent off. And that's especially important because pretty often I play with get stuck in. And that means like my guys are going for some action. And if I have that instruction, but I don't want to change it around for the whole team, I can just go to him and tell him to do that. And of course, like if my central defenders might be struggling, maybe want them to mark tighter, maybe want them to tackle harder, try to change stuff up like that, see what happens. If they can maybe put an end to the opponent's attacking side. And of course, you can change around your formation ASAP here. I mean, you can use your pre-built ones by just clicking them, but you can as well just drag things around, like change things around, like, oh, they were attacking my flank, let's focus on defense, or they're not attacking on flanks at all, let's go all out attacking maybe. Stuff like that, change around the formation depending on what you see and what you get for information from this screen. But the next step is not only watching this screen, it's going to the analysis. This is a very powerful tool when it comes to match tactics during the game. You have the heat maps to see where are the players, where are they focusing, and you also have advices from your assistant manager. Maybe you want to make changes based on what he thinks, what he says going on the pitch. But maybe you also want to go in and do your own analysis. First off, if you click on match stats, you can get, this is the basic information more or less we saw before, but you can click these, and this is some more information compared to that short match stats we saw on the match screen. You can go in for the different teams, and I usually don't care that much for the stats for the opposing team, but this one could be extremely important. And it's especially one thing that I usually use this screen for when it comes to tactics, and that's passing. Because as you can see, for example, this is how many passes they've taken, and this is the completion ratio. Of course, you want this to be as high as possible, because I mean, this, for example, means that he has only managed to have 65% of his passes reaching the target. And then, of course, different players play on different roles. And if somebody's really, really bad on completing passes, maybe you want to go back to the tactics and perhaps tell them to, let's see here, fewer risky passes. Now I can't do it based on the role, because this is a playmaker, and you can't tell a playmaker to take fewer risky passes. But for some other roles, you can actually tell them to take fewer risky passes. And if one of your players is struggling with that, maybe you should do that. But on the other hand, sometimes it's okay for the lad to miss his passes. For example, Soso here, yes, it's a very low percentage, and I'm displeased with percentage. But these two things are really important also, because this is key chances created by the player, or key passes, and this is chances created by the player. So yeah, Soso have been missing maybe a little too many passes, but he's also at the same time one of the guys who creating most key passes and chances. So I mean, you need to take this into consideration. Some players that are really good at the passing stat, I mean, he's pretty good, but then you might even want to tell them like it's okay for them to take more risky passes because you think it's worth it. So for Soso, for example, you can see I have the setting him here for him to take more risky passes. So I'm okay with him missing a few because he's pretty good at passes and he is creating chances. But doing analysis like that can be really useful, and it can make you want to maybe change somebody around to take more risky passes or fewer risky passes. And if you can't change it around, like we couldn't change it around with the Biglia here, it's because of what role they have. For example, a playmaker, you can't tell them to take less risky passes, but you can tell them to take more risky passes. And let's get back to the analytics. But yeah, you can also look at other stuffs here with tackling, with crosses, with heading, shooting. But yeah, as I said, the thing I focus most on from this view is passing. Report is just a report for everything that's been going on during the game. Formation, if you want to take a clear look at the team's formations. Let's go over to the team analysis here. And this is also a very useful view. And one thing, the thing I use the most here, because if let's for example I click shots, and I can see like, okay, a goal here, and it's going to show you where was that shot. But the one I'm most interested in is usually off target. And right now we see both teams. So if I only want to see my team, I can click here. And if I want to see both teams. And the really interesting thing with this one is if you combine this information with the basic statistic here, shots on targets. And as you can see, this is actually a pretty decent one. You're taking 7 shots, 4 on target. But sometimes, let's say you play a game and you have taken like 15 shots and only managed to get 3 on target. Then you want to find out what is going on here and how can we prevent it. And then it could be a really important thing to just go over here, select shots off target and try to find out, because maybe you find out that yeah, your team has taken 15 shots, but all of them was taking like really far from the goal, and then you need to start to find out why are we taking all of these shots far from the goal. One solution could be maybe to go to tactics and try to work it into the box. Maybe you have shot on sight and the guys are clearly shooting all the time and it's not working. You maybe want to try to work into the box, see if that helps. But could also be another option, because you know every player has an ability for finishing and for long shots, and it could be the option that you find out that the wrong guy is shooting. And if you have a guy that's really bad at long shots, you definitely don't want him be the one taking long shots. I mean, for example, Locatelli, he's actually pretty good at long shots. This is a 15 ability. So maybe you want to tell them that right now I have shoot less often. And maybe that's not the right option, but considering the role he's playing, since he is a deep line playmaker, we can't actually tell him to shoot more often. But in some other roles, you might be able to do that. So if this guy would have been really good at shooting, you could tell him to shoot more often. But if he is the guy that are missing like all those chances because he has a 4 in long shot ability, maybe you want to tell him to shoot less often. So by combining like working into the box or shoot less often, you might prevent the players taking shots from far away, missing the goal. Or the other way around. If you have great players that are shooting so well, combining shoot more often, and you try to tell the team to shoot on sight. I mean, that could have the exact effect that you are trying to take those shots and try to score. And yeah, I'll look most at the shots. Just remember that you see both teams. And if you hover the mouse over one of these, you will see who was the guy that took the shot. And then you can see also like, because now we have very few shots of targets, that's why we not see many. But let's say you had 15 shots of targets, it's going to be dots everywhere here. And they can start to try to find out, like, is there one guy that have taken the majority of those shots and I'm missing like crazy? Well, maybe that's the guy you're going to tell to shoot less often. So this is a very, very important and strong tool. And you can find information like this for like everything, passes, crosses. I mean, you can tell a player to hit early crosses if you want them to cross more. You can tell them, there's so many options if you go to the individual players based on the information you find out here. And yeah, this is very useful tool. And of course, you can click find information for players and action zones, shots, even more information about them, feedback from your assistant manager, different things. And this last one, it will just take you to the same screen we saw before with when we went for team and selected players. But this is a very, very strong tool to help you analyze your game. And if you're really serious into tactics, I mean, most of the times, if we are winning and doing well, I don't care about this. But whenever we are struggling, like right now, we are behind versus Napoli, I would definitely pause the game and really try to find out like what's going wrong, what can we do to change it around. And taking a look at the analysis tool is a very important thing. And if there are some certain things here, you can set them up to show, and not all the things you can find there, but I mean, some of them, you can see shots and focuses on attacks and so on. So experimenting with this view and use it, because it's a very important tool and it will tell you what changes you should do. Then of course, even if you have the perfect tactic and make like perfect, brilliant changes, you might lose the game anyways. I mean, it doesn't matter because your team is going to have better days, it's going to have worse days, and maybe the opponent's just too good. I mean, if you're playing a low league team and you're up against Barcelona in the cup, you're probably going to lose if they use the best team. Even if you have the best tactic in the world, you're still going to lose because they are Barcelona and their players are a gazillion times better than yours. But doing things like this, analyzing stuff, taking it slow, will definitely help you improve. So whenever you're behind, whenever you have a problem, pause the game, take a look at this information, go to analysis, and then go to tactics, change things around with the formation, the individual players, where their role are, with these settings, with the individual instructions, things like that will help you win games and come back. It won't help you every time, but definitely after a lot of training, you will do better and better. And I've reached halftime in my game, and as you can see, Conte decided to pick up a red card just before the halftime whistle, and our chances to turn this game around just got not destroyed, but decreased by a lot. Because as you can tell by statistics, I mean, we had more shots on target, so we definitely were in a position when we could have equalized. But this is going to make the second half so much harder. And halftime is a good time to have a team talk. Always have a team talk during halftime, and it's basically the same as I said before the game. I never hand this one over to my assistant. And in a situation like this one, when I'm behind, I always go aggressive, and I always tell them that I'm very displeased with what's going on right now. So I'm going to tell them, show me something else in the second half. And it usually almost always works. Like if you are behind, or even if it's a draw, tell them that you are displeased, and they always get motivated, fired up, and so on. And whenever I had a guy sent off, I'll always have an individual talk with him and tell him that it's unacceptable. It is. And this time, he reacted badly. And he's a very young guy. I think he's like 21, 22, something like that. And if you are too harsh on young kids, sometimes they will react badly. But to my experience, because I've done this hundreds of times, most of the players actually handles it good, and like, yeah, they gets fired up and they want to improve for the future. Because I usually follow this one up after the games by finding my players that get sent off, and by actually have talked to them before, makes that a little bit easier, I believe, for them to handle. But maybe since he's a very young lad, I shouldn't have gone that aggressive. Maybe I should just have been calm or assertive and tell him that I'm not pleased. But still, I think it's a right decision, and I'm always going to tell my guys getting sent off that it's not okay. It's definitely not okay. And another tip is if you are in the lead, never please them too much. If you tell them like, oh, you've been fantastic, you've been sensational, it almost always, at least to me, has the effect that they start slacking like hell. They might be happy here because I said nice things to them, but usually they perform so much worse in the second half. So usually if we're behind, if it's a draw or we only have a 1-goal lead, I always tell them like, I expect more, you can do this better, I'm not pleased, I want more. If you have a 2-goal lead, I usually tell them, because it's usually an option saying like something like, yeah, you're doing well right now, but guys, you need to focus because things can turn around very quickly in football. Something like that, and it usually has the effect that they stay focused. I mean, sometimes, like if you have a 4-goal lead, yeah, well, then I might go passionate and say, yeah, guys, happy, fantastic, because I know that we are safe. The other team won't turn it around. But usually the result is that they will slack during the second half. Next thing to think about during the game is your substitutions, because other than changing things around the tactics, it's your major way to change the game around. And as you can see, I've already made a sub. I made an early one because I felt I couldn't play with 3 defenders after Conte gets sent off, because they were abusing it, they were attacking on his position. It was basically empty there, so I had to do something early. But we have been creating chances, like we can still do this if we get a little bit lucky. But to me, there's 2 reasons to make subs, except then when, of course, you have somebody sent off. And those 2 is when players are starting to get tired, because you want fresh legs on the pitch. You don't want players that are dying. That's the one reason. Another reason is how they are performing. Do you have somebody that's playing like garbage? Probably want to sub him. And you can also combine that with body language. Now, of course, you want players to be like motivated, fired up. Stuff like that is good. But sometimes you have players that are nervous or even very nervous. If I have a player that are like pretty tired or playing with low rating and is very nervous, I usually sub him. And I usually sort this by fitness level. And my first option here would be to be sub Suso. But he is fired up. And he's kind of like the only, together with my goalie Donnarumma and one of my defenders, he's like the only guy that's playing like pretty good. So I'm actually going to keep him on, even though just looking at the fitness levels, he would have been my first option to sub. So by sorting on rating, we can see he was having a really garbage day. And I'm going to go with Borini. It's not like, I've seen worse, but 6.5 is definitely not good enough. So I'm going to bring in Bonaventura instead. And normally I do my subs around the 70th minute if nothing special happens, like this red card, or I really like need to completely change formation around because something happens. Because I feel like that's when some of your guys is starting to get tired. And of course you can experiment in yourself, find time there like you like it. It might depend on like the fitness level of your team and things like that when you want to do them. And I usually do around 2 subs then, and then I save the last sub for a little bit longer in case we get an injury or something like that. But right now, since we already made an early sub, I'm just going to make 1 sub for now, and then I'm going to wait a little bit longer in case we get an injury or something else happens. And the match is over. We are at the match highlights here, and I'm going to tell you or show you the fantastic thing that happened. And I made 1 more sub. I brought in a young kid called Barrow. And I kept Soso, just like last time I made subs. I kept him on the pitch, even though he was very tired. He was playing very good, and he was focused, fired up. I wanted on the pitch. And look at this. And first off, we have the first sub here, linking up with Soso, the guy I kept on, passing Bonaventura the scores. And Bonaventura was, of course, another of the subs I made. So 2 of the subs and the guy I decided to keep on, even though he was tired. And then this happens. Barrow again, the young kid, finds Sosa again. And Sosa finds who? Well, Bonaventura. So 2 of the guys are subbed on, and the guy I decided to keep on the pitch, even though he was tired, by motivating him with the information they gave me, manage, because of I did that, because of those subbed and because I kept Sosa on, these 3 guys linked up and we managed to turn things around from being 1 goal down to actually winning 2 goals against 1 away with 1 less man on the pitch. And after the game is done, it's of course one thing left to do, and it's to have the team talk. And I don't have to say it, don't handle it over to the assistants, you are going to do it yourself. And as I said, it's very rarely for me to use passionate, but we were 1 win down and we managed to turn it around. That's a fantastic thing. So this is one of those rare occasions when I actually go passionate, and I'm going to tell them, you've done brilliant to come back and win that. I'm proud of you. And one thing I usually do, if one of my players has a really, really good rating, like Sosa here, I also have an individual team talk with him, and I'm going to tell him that I'm very, very happy with this performance. And some of the players, they might react differently. Some of them don't like it when you say nice things, some of them love it. Use it carefully and learn from their reactions. If they react badly, well, maybe you shouldn't do it, or maybe you should say something else. But that's usually what I do. And the next step is, of course, the press conference. And yeah, Bonucci got injured, not happy. And Conte, of course, is banned after that red card. But as I said before the game, do your own press conferences. I don't believe it have that much effect on the game itself, but it do have effect of what your players think about you. And you want them happy, you want morale high. Also, there was another type of press conference we didn't get during this game, and sometimes you get tunnel interviews, but it doesn't happen every game, and we didn't get to see one now. Sometimes I do them myself, but pretty often I let the assistant manager do it, because I feel like they rarely affect the game at all, or the player morale, because they are talking like other things. My players are already like in the dressing room or on the pitch warming up, but definitely experimenting with them yourself, and it could definitely be worth doing it. Maybe I'm just a little bit lazy and I don't do it all the time. After the game is done, there might be one more thing you want to do considering the match tactics, and that's got to go back to the game you have played and analyze it. How did things work out? Was there something you forgot to look out before? And also one thing that can be extra interesting is, have you changed something around? When you do experimenting with the tactics, you might, but let's say I was using one tactic for this one and another tactic for that one. I might want to go into both of those games and take a look at different things. Let's say, for example, you had a player in this game that were missing a lot of shots, and for the next game you changed it around so he should take less shots. You could try to check it out, like what effect did it have, how did it change around, and so on. So if you want to be serious about your tactics, you definitely should, whenever you have done changes to your tactics, look through a few games and see what effect that changes had. Are you tackling harder? What effects does that have? Are you picking up more cards? Are you conceding less goals? There's so many things to take a look at. But yeah, this has been a very long guide. I just want to say a massive thank you for watching through all of this guide. And when it comes to tactics in Football Manager, nothing is set in stone. People do it differently. The best thing you can take with you from these guides is basically the tools that are in this game and experimenting with them. Because what works with one say might not work with another. And I would love for you guys to use the comments below. Like, are there things I say that you don't agree with? Share it. Are you doing things completely different? Share it. Because, I mean, this is a very interesting thing. Football Manager and tactics is a huge topic. Things do things differently. And I would love to learn from your guys. and you can probably help other people around. So share your knowledge in the comment section. Massive thank you for watching, and goodbye.